In this tutorial, we will be looking at rationalizing the denominator with imaginary numbers. To rationalize the denominator with an imaginary number, we do something similar to rationalizing with radicals. If we look at the denominator and it's one term, we just need to multiply by I. If the denominator has two terms, then we need to multiply by the conjugate. So for letter A, if I just multiply by I, then the top becomes 8I and the bottom becomes 3I squared. And we know that I squared is negative 1. So then we have 8I over negative 3, or you can write it as negative 8I over 3. It is okay to have an I in the numerator, we just don't want them in the denominator. So let's look at letter B. There's an I in the denominator, so let's multiply by I over I. And then because the top has minus sign, we have two terms, I need to distribute I to both. So I get 3I minus 2I squared over negative 6, I times I is I squared, which becomes 3I minus 2 times I squared is negative 1 over negative 6 times I squared again is negative 1. So on the top I have 3I, negative times a negative is a positive 2, negative times a negative on the bottom is positive 6, and we always write the real value first, so 2, and then the imaginary second, all over 6. And since I can't divide 2, 3, and 6 by the same number, this would be our answer. Let's look at letter C. Letter C has a minus sign in the denominator, so we need that as a quantity. And then we need to multiply by the conjugate. So we have 5 plus 8I, and then 5 plus 8I. And since there are two terms, I distribute the 4I to both. So then I would get 4 times 5 is 20I, plus 8 times 4 is 32, I times I is I squared, over, and then like we've done before, we have 5 minus 8I, and 5 plus 8I, and I get 25, and we have negative 8 times 5 is 40I, and then 8 times 5 is positive 40I, and those cancel out. Remember, conjugates cancel. And then minus 8 times 8 is 64, I squared, but we know that I squared is a negative 1. So negative 64 times negative 1 is a positive 64. So then 64 plus 25, we have 89. And I can't divide by the same number for all of them, so I'm not going to simplify that, but what I can do is 32 times I squared, so we have 20 plus 20I plus 32 times negative 1, because I squared is negative 1, all over 89. And then a negative times a positive, I have 20I minus 32 over 89. And again, I'm going to put the real first, so I have negative 32 plus 20I over 89. And that would be my answer. For letter D, we see that we have minus 7I in the top, which is a quantity, and plus 2I in the bottom, which is a quantity, and I want to get rid of I in the bottom, so I multiply by the conjugate on top and bottom. And then I can take the top, negative 8 minus 7I, 9 minus 2I, negative 8 times 9 is negative 72. Negative 7 times 9 is negative 63I. Negative 8 times negative 2 is positive 16I. And negative 2 times negative 7 is a positive 14I squared. And we know that I squared is negative 1. So we have negative 14. So then we can combine negative 14 and negative 72. And we get negative 86. Negative 16I and positive 16I and negative 63I is negative 47I all over. And we know that negative 4 times negative 1, because I squared is negative 1, so negative times negative is a positive 4. So 4 and 81 make 85. So we can't divide everything by the same number, so that is our answer.